worst case, but it sure looks pretty likely, China invades Taiwan. Chances are the U.S. will do the same thing they did to Russia. What's going on, everybody? I'm your host, Chris Naugle, and welcome back to Money School Podcast. I thought this episode was very timely. So today is April 11th, 2023. And if you've been following anything in the headlines, you've noticed there's been bank failures. There's also been talk of China invading Taiwan. There's still the Russia-Ukraine war. There's talk of FedNow, which is essentially the first step to the CBDC, the central bank digital currency. There's so much stuff going on. Some of your heads are probably like most ready to explode because you just don't know what to do. And what a lot of people do when they don't know what to do is freeze. They do nothing. That, my friends, is one of the most dangerous things that any of you can do. Do not be a deer in headlights, because you all know what happens, right? When the deer freezes in the middle of the throughway, when you're going 65, that's right. Dead deer, dented car. That's what happens. Don't be the dead deer and don't be the dented car. And that requires you to take action. Before we get into taking action, I want to test all of you on something. So you watch these podcasts, you maybe watch my YouTube channel. And if you're not, make sure you go down and subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is at The Chris Naugle. I put new videos up every single day. You want to know what's going on in the world, in the economy. You want to know what's happening and how to actually get ahead of it. That's where you do it, my YouTube channel. But here's the thing. All this information that I give you, all this knowledge is completely useless. It's useless if you don't apply this knowledge. Because if you just go about watching these videos to get entertainment or whatever it is you do, you're getting nowhere because you're not taking action on what you're learning. So I want to test you on taking action. And I want to do that by giving you something for free. I'm going to give you both of my books right here. Got Mapping Out the Millionaire Mystery, which is going to teach you all about a over 100-year-old wealth strategy used by the wealthiest families, plus Private Money Guide. And you can get these books for free, but you got to take action. I'm not going to make you do anything crazy, but here's the deal. Write this down. Go to Chris Naugle, Naugle.com. Couple index fingers down, you'll see books, or just go right up to the top and click books and get yourself a copy of both of those books. Now, let's dive back in, because now you know that knowledge is useless without application. Let's get into some application. So I want to hit several topics on this episode, and it's going to be very fast and it's going to be really concise. The first thing I want to talk about is everything you all have been hearing about, the digital dollar. Now, they're calling it the CBDC. And a lot of you are losing faith in the American dollar because the Fed just keeps printing more of it. You've heard that the Saudis and Russia and China and India are all striking deals to trade oil in other currencies like the yuan, which is the Chinese currency, which is not right now stable enough to probably trade oil, but it's a short-term solution. And it's kind of just a left hook to the US's face to say, hey, we don't like you. We don't like the dollar. We're going to do it our way. But the rest of the world hasn't adopted that. Only certain countries have, because right now, over 60% of all transactions worldwide are done in the US dollar. So if you think there's overnight that's going to go away because of some deals that are happening between the Saudis and China, and the deals between the Saudis and Russia and all those intermix and the BRICS, it's not yet. Is the dollar in danger of losing its reserve currency? Yeah, but it could take some time. And a matter of fact, it's not going to go without a fight. And that's going to be another part of today's episode, the fight. What does that look like? But let's get back to CBDC. The digital currency. Newsflash. The Fed is starting to roll out what they're calling FedNow, which is a bill pay type of app or something or another that is going to allow us all to pay bills using this FedNow type of program. And the cool thing is all the transactions will happen instantaneously. That's right. When money is sent, it's available instantly. It will clear instantly. It's no more of this, like, when Venmo sends money, you think it clears right away, but it doesn't. It's almost an IOU, and it needs to clear through a bank. All transactions currently have to clear through some type of banking instrument or physical bank, right? That means time is wasted and things aren't clearing right away, which leaves room for lots of problems many of you have faced, right? You've made deposits in your bank and then you got bills coming out of your bank. And sometimes the bills come out before the deposit's clear. And you're like, wait a second, I made the deposit. And the bank's like, yeah, but it didn't clear. And you're like, but I made it. And the bank's like, it didn't clear. And you're like, but I made it and I paid it. Doesn't matter. That's what FedNow will solve the problem of. It will all happen instantly. The digital dollar, okay, CBDC, central bank digital currency. What will that mean for you? I got good news. Nothing. And there's not a darn thing you can do about it. There's nothing at all you can do about it. People call us all the time. Well, what is this digital dollar if it happens? It's not if. It is when, because it will happen. Well, what's that going to mean for our infinite banking policies? Nothing. What's it going to mean for buying everything? Nothing. It's going to be almost identical to what you do today, because everything you do today is done mostly on a credit card, is it not? Except for now, the credit card might not say, well, it might not say Visa or MasterCard or Amex. It might say FedNow. It might say something else. I don't know. But all I'm just saying is, everything that you're used to doing today, when you go out to dinner, when you buy drinks, when you buy, things at the store, when you pay for repairs on your car, they're all usually done on some type of a credit card or debit card. You see, we've been being trained to get used to using digital currency. And oh boy, do we. How many of you actually use cash? How many of you pay for dinner in cash? How many of you buy cars in physical cash? Like, you walk into the cash or the big briefcase, like we used to see back in the 50s and 60s, a big briefcase full of cash, and say, here you go. And you hand them that? Heck no. You're writing a check. You're wiring money. You're sending money however you are. A lot of times it's being financed. You have been being conditioned to use digital currency for quite some time, and now it's going to become real. So all of this worry about something that you have no control over is exactly that. Useless and pointless worries. You want to lose sleep at night? Lose sleep about something more important, which could be the fact that China more than likely will invade Taiwan, which more than likely will thrust the U.S. into a war that the U.S. is not ready to fight and should not fight, because we in the U.S. tend to love to fight wars for other people, for other reasons, not for our own reasons. We're not fighting for our freedom, or are we? At least at this point, we're not yet. The fight that we have right now, as the way I see it, is right on our doorstep. It is the fight against divide. It is the fight against the media. It is the fight against the government trying to tell us that we have to get vaccinated, tell us that we have to do this, making everything a divide, black and white, vaxxed and unvaxxed, whatever it might be. I feel like we're at war on our front doorstep. But yet, the government seems to want to be in the Russia-Ukraine war. They want to support Ukraine. Now, I'm not trying to make an opinion on this, whether or not we should or should not support them. That's not my place. Okay. I don't have enough knowledge on that. But if China invades Taiwan, I can tell you right now, that more than likely is going to thrust us in some type of conflict with China. And I don't know about any of you. It's not a conflict I want to fight. But let me transition back to CBDC, the digital dollar. If you're worried about that, stop, because there's nothing you can do about it. When it happens, it's going to happen. You live in the United States of America, and mark my words, you still live in the land of the free, the greatest country on earth. There is no better country, no stronger country than the United States of America. Don't forget that. And if you have forgotten that, well, you know what? Why don't you just get yourself over to the airport, take a flight to somewhere else, another country, pack your bags and leave forever. Because if you don't respect what the United States stands for, then you have no right living here. I probably shouldn't say that on a podcast, but you know what? It's the truth. Have some respect for the country and for the fallen heroes that have given everything for the freedom that we enjoy in this country, for the greatest country on earth. Let's keep it that way. And those of you that don't think it is, those of you that want to say it's not, bye-bye. Go to Russia, go to China. There's plenty of other places you can move where you can sit there and see how bad things are on the other side. The grass is not greener. So stop the crying, stop the worrying, and stop worrying about things you can't control. Because in this country, there is one currency we can use, and that is the dollar. Now, whether the dollar are these little fiat green bills, these paper bills, or a digital currency, that's all it is. Now, there are some bads that come along with the CBDC. Number one, that gives the government full control. I want you to imagine right now, when you do your taxes at the end of the year, you meet with your CPA and everything else, and you try to calculate everything. You hope you don't miss anything. In the future, you might not even need to do a tax return. I mean, in some way, shape, or form, you probably will, but the government's already going to know every penny you made and every penny you spent. So literally, it could be to the point where you just get an invoice. Here's the taxes you owe. Congratulations. We know everything you bought and we know everything you made, because now with the digital dollar, everything is trackable. Everything. So I don't know what that looks like. I don't particularly love that, but I do know one thing for certain. I know that what we teach with the infinite banking concept teaches you how to take back control of your money by you becoming your own bank. That's right. You take back control because you take back the banking functions in your life. And in doing that, you are in control of your dollars. I don't care if they're paper. I don't care if they're digital. You control them and you control how they go to work for you. And if you actually practice and learn the infinite banking concept, the process of the infinite banking concept, you will then understand the power of what we teach going into these trying, interesting, and scary times. Let me transition back to the world as it is. Your real estate business lives and dies by the network and the connections that you make. I mean, after all, your network, well, it's your net worth. That's what you always heard, right? If that's an area where you desire improvement, well, Private Money Club, it's for you. PMC saves you precious time and money by bringing the real estate world, well, right to you, right in the palm of your hand. So get in on the action like so many others have by going to privatemoneyclub.com and sign up. So, as you all know, back in the 40s, okay, several things happened. FDR put out a whole executive order stating that everybody that had gold had to, within a 1 month time frame, turn their gold in. And if they didn't, they were penalized $10,000. That's the equivalent of $180,000 in today's dollars after inflation. Keyword inflation. See, it got you there. And not only that, you could serve, if I'm not mistaken, up to 10 years in prison. But then shortly thereafter, okay, Franklin D. Roosevelt, FDR, made a trip over to the king of Saudi Arabia, okay, the Saudi king, and struck a deal because back then the United States of America had the greatest military. We had just won World War II. We were the dominant nation, which we still are. But I'm talking about when we were literally in the golden age, okay? Back then, we provided protection to Saudi Arabia in return for oil that they pumped and oil that they had being valued in US dollars. Hence, the petrodollar was born. And as many of you know, in the 70s, Nixon took us off the gold standard. So our actual dollars, these greenbacks, used to be valued by gold. Fort Knox, you guys have heard of that. It used to be valued by gold. But Nixon in the 70s took us off the gold standard, which meant then our dollars were only backed by the full faith and credit of the United States of America, which was still good enough for most of the world. Because why? Well, we had the reserve currency, which we still do today. I don't know for how much longer, but we do today. And today, like I mentioned earlier, I'll mention it again, 60% of all transactions worldwide are done in the US dollar. So that should give you some strength and some excitement, knowing that the US dollar is still the reigning champion, and it is still the petrodollar where most oil is valued in. However, that seems to be changing. So obviously the Saudis don't really care too much about protection from the US because they can get protection from who? Well, maybe Russia, protection from maybe China. They might not need protection from the US, but this isn't the first time the Saudis have said, we don't want oil valued in US dollars. And again, it comes down to control. The Saudis probably don't want to give up that much control, but I'm not here to talk to you about that. But I am here to talk to you about some of the things that are developing. As you all may know or have heard me say, the Fed, okay? The Fed's number one job is to protect the dollar. That's it. And if you don't know, the Fed is responsible for funding a lot of wars. Okay, so wars for countries or for the Fed, for the central bank, is a very profitable time. Now, that's not good. Okay, that's not good because you don't want the Fed to want to profit off of war. But the Fed's number one job is to protect the dollar. And the dollar is coming under fire. Because now with this deal that's going on, and you're seeing all the headlines. I don't care if it's India. I don't care who it is, but there's lots of other chatter out there. But we definitely know Russia. We definitely know India. We definitely know Brazil. We definitely know China are all trying to figure out ways to buy and trade oil under another currency. Right now, there are sanctions out against Russia. We can't buy Russian oil, and nor can European nations buy Russian oil because they've both said, nope, we're not going to support Russia. But all Russia does is sell oil to other countries. Like, let's just pick on India. It sells oil to India. India then mixes it with their oil, okay? And then they sell it on the open market. Or they sell the oil to someone else like China, or, you could just pick it up and it's mixed. Okay, it's blended. And then that blend is sold back to Europe and back to the US. But yet it's not Russian oil because it's really oil from Saudi Arabia. But the oil from Saudi Arabia, and I'm just making this up, it might not be Saudi oil, but India probably. Maybe they mix it with a blend, okay, of India oil. And now we're not buying oil from Russia, we're buying oil from India. But India bought the oil from Russia. Do you see what I'm saying? It's such a mess. It really is. So we sanctioned Russia, which pissed Putin off, okay, rightfully so. And we froze a whole bunch of US dollars. Why? Because, well, Russia used to trade a lot in US dollars and held a lot of US dollars. So we froze those. That made them mad. So now they're off on a vengeance to try to create their own currency that then could rival the dollar. And they pair up with China. And China does have a currency, but it's still pegged to the dollar. Everything's pegged to the dollar. But they're trying to break from that. So let's just say worst case, but it sure looks pretty likely, China invades Taiwan. Chances are the US will do the same thing they did to Russia to China. They will put sanctions out. They will freeze assets or do different things like that. And I can't remember, I think it's like $860 billion that China owns of US debt called treasury bonds, but they'd probably sanction things. Trade would halt between China and the US to some extent. And then all of a sudden, you'd probably have yourself in the midst of a war. Now, again, I said it earlier and I'm going to say it again. I don't really like the idea of the US going to war with China. I really don't. And I hope we never get there, because that then seems like it becomes a world war, because then you got Russia, you got China, you got India, and you got all the other allies of those nations. And then you got the US and our allies. Folks, if history provides the path from the past, if you really trace it forward and you watch Ray Dalio, it sure seems like this is the path that we're going to right now, and it's not good. But the best thing you can do is stop worrying about things you can't control and start worrying about things you can control. Start getting ready for what will probably be one of the biggest recessions of your lifetime. And when we go into this recession, I can tell you one of the things you do not want is debt. So it's time to really create your budget. It's time to look at your debts. It's time to stop spending money on foolish things. It's time, like Tyler Durden from Fight Club said it best. We work jobs we hate to buy things we don't need to impress people we don't even like. If you can't take the message out of what Tyler Durden from Fight Club said, then you've got other issues to deal with. Right now is the time to hunker down. It's time to cut back on some of the spending. It's time to thin out the debt, pay off the credit cards, work a little bit of extra overtime while you still can, because in the future, your job might be gone. Because during a recessionary period, and if you've been following what the Fed's been saying, the last leg of a three-legged stool is employment. Why are we not deep into a recession yet when we should be? Well, you're employed. We're all employed because that third leg of the stool represents low unemployment. And the second we lose that is when we slip. That's right, folks. That is it. There's only one thing holding this entire economy up. There's only one thing keeping us from being deep into a recession, because we technically are in a recession, but we're not in a deep recession. And most of you don't feel like we're in a recession because you got a job. But when you don't have a job and your income gets cut down and you're only getting unemployment, if you get that, then are you going to be able to maintain those debts, those car payments, those equity line payments, all those lines of credit? Are you going to be able to maintain all those credit card payments? Chances are the answer is no. And if history should serve as any type of guide, every time during a recessionary period when people lose jobs, that's what sinks a family: debt. So you want the answer? Get out of debt. You want to know how to get out of debt? Watch my videos. I've got great videos on chrisnaugle.com. Matter of fact, when you go to chrisnaugle.com to get those free books I told you about, because you're going to take action, a video is going to pop up, a 90-minute video. And when you watch that video, at the end of the video, you can fast forward, but I wouldn't suggest it. Watch the whole thing. It will show you how to erase debt and recycle and recapture all of the money you're giving away. That's how you do it, folks. There is no better way that I've ever seen to get rid of debt than to use the systems we teach. And if that's not enough, go to my YouTube channel at The Chris Naugle and watch all the case studies of real clients that we have helped get out of absurd amounts of debt in very short periods of time without working any harder, without working any longer, and without taking on any additional risk. So what's the answer? The answer comes down to the word control. The answer: you stop focusing on things you can't control and start focusing on things you can control. Okay? Let me repeat that. Stop focusing on things you cannot control and start focusing on things that you can control. And what you can control is taking back the banking functions in your life. You can control where your money goes first. Don't put it into the banks that are failing. Don't put it into Wall Street, which is going down and going to go down even more. Put it into a place where you control it. Put it with a giant mutually owned insurance company like the wealthiest families do. And in the video on my website, it teaches you exactly how to do that. And once the money goes there, then you practice the infinite banking concept. The process of taking back those banking functions starts with changing one thing, and that's where your money goes first. So folks, I hope this wakes you up a little bit. I hope it gets you to take action, because maybe other videos have not, but hopefully this one does. And I hope it helps you avoid the pitfalls that are going to come to so many American households when this whole thing lets loose. And folks, it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. Thanks for joining me. This is the Money School podcast, and I'll see you next time.